How do Arceus decks change with Paldea evolved? Well, we're going to find out. Hey, Nick with 9Card TCG, and today we're going to be looking at surprise Arceus decks. And we're not looking at surprise Arceus decks. Well, that was sarcasm. We're looking at Arceus decks. And this was actually requested to me. So, if you're interested in playing Arceus decks for NAIC, which Paldea evolved will be legal for NAIC, this might be something you're interested in, or at the very least, having an idea of how Arceus decks might adapt to the Paldea evolved meta. Still kind of important. With all that said, we're going to get every time I get so close to finishing that... We're going to go to Pokegear. Let me get the video in the description. So here we are at Pokegear, and really, it hasn't changed that much. I don't think there's a ton of change in Arceus decks with Paldea evolved. We're still running a 4-2 Arceus line, a 2-2 Duraludon, 2-2 Umbreon, but really the goal is to just get Arceus into play as soon as possible. So we run a 4-4 Nest Ball, Ultra Ball to make that happen. Nest Ball, search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it directly onto your bench. And Ultra Ball, discard 2 cards from your hand and search your deck for a Pokemon and put it into your hand. So yeah, we got to get a Pokemon. We got to get that Arceus V into play immediately. Ideally, we want to have an energy in hand as well so we can attach to the Arceus, especially if we go first, right? We go first, we really want to attach an energy to the Arceus V, because we won't be able to Trinity Charge, but the next turn we'll be able to evolve, and then we can use Starburst, which lets us search a deck for any 2 cards we want, which is incredible, and then we can probably get that double Turbo Energy and something else, and now we're hitting with Trinity Nova. Yeah, sure, the double Turbo Energy means we're hitting for 180, but we get to search a deck for 3 basic energies and attach them to our Pokemon V in any way we want, which is really, really nice. That lets us set up the Duraludon V. More importantly, the Duraludon V Max. We're really never going to use the Duraludon V, but it has a weird cost of fighting double metal. We can go ahead and use Arceus V-Star's Trinity Charge and Trinity Nova's attack to get those metal and fighting energies onto the Duraludon V or even the V Max, and then start hitting with G-Max Pulverization for big damage. 220 damage is nothing to scoff at. And also, by the way, we're not affected by effects and abilities on our opponent's Pokemon, which is really, really nice. And we can't get hit by Pokemon that have special energy attached. This means Lugia decks. Lugia decks, right? A lot of them, the big thing is Lugia is going to move to colorless builds, which means they're getting rid of the single strike build. So no more single strike Urshifu means you just win to Lugia if you can get a Duraludon VMAX into play. That's it. You just win. There's nothing they can do about it. Unless they start playing Path to the Peak for some reason, they don't have an answer to your Duraludon, so you just don't have to bench other things. You don't want to put too many Pokemon in play where they can, knock out an Arceus, knock out an Umbreon, knock out a Lumineon, and then never have to go through your Duraludon, right? Just be smart about what you bench. Anyway, speaking of Umbreon V, again, we don't really want to use. We want to use the Umbreon VMAX, and we have to bench the Umbreon V to use the Umbreon VMAX. That's a whole thing. But Dark Signal, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve your Umbreon V, you can switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active. It is a free boss Zordus, which is absolutely incredible. And the Max Darkness hits for 160 for a Metal 2 colorless. Now, I replaced the single strike energy with the brand new luminous energy as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon that provides every type of energy but only one energy at a time. However, if the Pokemon that this card is attached to has any other special energy, it only provides a colorless energy instead. Now, I personally think the single strike energy is still better, but this does make it so Lumineon can attack. This makes it so you can attach it to your Duraludon or your Umbreon and fulfill maybe the fighting or the dark. You could attach it to the Arceus. We don't really care if it only provides a colorless, because even if we have the DTE attached, it's still a colorless energy. We don't really care. Technically, you can attach it to the Radiant Alakazam and attack with Radiant Alakazam. Not that you'd really want to, but if you are playing against a Lost Zone deck and they have a ton of cards in hand, you're playing against a Gardevoir deck and they have a ton of cards in hand, Mind Roar, 20 damage for each card in your opponent's hand, It's not a terrible option, especially with the single prize option. Speaking of that Radiant Alakazam, Painful Spoons, once in your turn, you may move up to 2 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another one of their Pokemon. It's a little bit of a niche move or like ability, but we can use that ability to fix some math on some KOs. So for example, we hit into Tyranitar and we've hit into a Lugia, something like that. We can go ahead and move damage from the Lugia onto the Tyranitar and KO it. For we hit into a Tyranitar, it has 220 damage on it now. It has 10 left. Next turn they run to the bench. They hit something else. We can move damage over to the Tyranitar, get the KO, something like that. It just lets us either fix math up front to get the KO or fix the math later to finish off the KO. So, kind of cool. I don't know how necessary it is, but it is something worth noting. Lumineon lets us search our deck for any supporter we want when we play it from the hand to the bench, and we got a lot of supporters to choose from. We can go ahead and get Culver's Experiment, so we can just look at the top 5 cards of our deck, choose 3 of them, 2 go into the 3 of them go into the hand, 2 and go into the lost zone, never to be seen again. It's really nice if we have something in hand that we don't want to get rid of, right? We just need that extra thing. Maybe we have the Choice Belt, but we need the Umbreon VMAX or an Ultra Ball in order to knock out a Mew VMAX, for example, right? We have the energies onto this. We just need to get like a switch to get the Duraludon VMAX out of the active and an Ultra Ball, right? We just need a thing. Culver's is a really great option because we don't have to get rid of any of the cards in our hand like we do with the other supporters. However, we do have things like Professor's Research. We just need a fresh start, discard your hand, draw 7. Just a fresh 7 cards. We lose the stuff in the deck, or in our hand, but hey, whatever. One of the cool things, we have a 1-1 split of Iono and Judge. And the reason why I did this is because Judge is really nice early game against Lost Zone decks if you feel like they're starting to build up too much momentum, but they haven't really taken any prizes yet. Iono still gives them 6 cards, and we'll talk about what Iono does in a second. But Judge says that both players just shuffle their hand into the deck and they draw 4 cards. So you kind of set them back a little bit. You can set God of War decks back a little bit like that. Again, they're going to be playing that catch-up type of deck where they're going to let you take the first couple of prizes. We don't really, we don't care. So Iono gives them 6, Judge will give them 4. What Iono does is each player shuffles their hand and puts it to the bottom of the deck, and then you draw cards equal to the number of prize cards you have remaining. This is very good in the very beginning of the game, especially for us if we have a bunch of energies in hand that we still want to accelerate out with Arceus V and VSTAR. So if we have all those energies in hand, we don't want to discard them, but we also don't want to keep them in hand, so the Culver's and the Research become less appealing. Judge, we don't see that many cards off of, so Iono is actually a really amazing card for this because we put those energies back into the deck. We still see 6 cards, which is really, really good, and we aren't going to see the energies that we just put into the deck because Judge shuffles our hands into the deck. There's a chance that we draw those energies back. Iono puts them to the bottom of the deck, so there's a 0% chance we will see the cards that we just put at the bottom of the deck in our hand, excluding other copies. We won't see those specific ones. Anyway, we do have a couple of copies of Pokegear to help us find some supporters. Maybe we don't have Lumineon or a way to get it. Maybe Path of the Peaks in play. Maybe we just don't want to put down a 2-prize liability. Whatever the reason is, we can go ahead and use Pokegear. Look at the top 7 cards of a deck, find a supporter, put it into our hand. This is great to help us find things like Adventurous Discovery, which lets us search our deck for 3 Pokemon V, put them into our hand so that we can go ahead get the Arceus V, VSTAR, really any of our Pokemon here, we can go ahead and get with the Adventurous Discovery, which is really, really nice. We can use Volo. Volo, discard one of your benched Pokemon V and all cards attached to it. This is a very defensive card. Maybe earlier in the game we used a Lumineon V and now we're afraid our opponent's just going to boss it up and KO for game. We can just say, okay, we're going to Volo, get rid of that Lumineon so you can't boss KO it. And we don't need it anymore. You damage this Duraludon VMAX, you hit into it really, really hard with Giratina, you hit it for 310 damage because you had a Choice Belt on that Giratina VSTAR just absolutely shredding into this Duraludon. we have 20 health left. They're going to KO us next turn super easily. We'll just go Volo, get rid of the Duraludon VMAX, and now we just denied you those 3 prizes. And our opponent lost zoned a couple of energies in the process as well, so they lost resources and got nothing in return. So we can do the same exact thing with Arceus. One of the things to note, you can replace this with the Sharon's Care if you want. However, the Sharon's Care will only let you pick up the Arceus, right? It only lets you pick up damaged colorless Pokemon. So if someone hits into the Arceus, we can go ahead, pick it up, boom, and then recycle the Arceus. Instead of going into the discard, Sharon's lets you bring it to the hand, so we can recycle energies, we can recycle the Choice Belt, the VSTAR, since we only have 2 of them. However, you're limited to the Arceus and it has to be damaged, so kind of like the Vol a little bit better. I talked about the Luminous Energy. Single Strike Energy is also a really good pick instead of the Luminous Energy. We won't be able to attack with Radiant Alakazam or the Lumineon. However, it still meets the fighting and dark requirements needed by the Duraludon and the Umbreon. You can only attach it to those Pokemon because Single Strike Energy is required to attach to a Single Strike Pokemon. But your damage does 20 more to your opponent's active. So that means even if we have a double Turbo Energy onto this Umbreon VMAX, with the Single Strike Energy, the plus 20 from the Single Strike Energy and the minus 20 from the DTE cancel out. Max Darkness is still hitting for 160. That means we are knocking out Gardevoir EXs, we're knocking out Mew VMAXs in a single hit without needing to have the Choice Belt, which is very nice. Duraludon VMAX, we have 2 metals and a Single Strike Energy. Now that 220 is hitting for 240, which means we're knocking out Tyranitar Vs in a single hit, which, might not be necessary because we can 2-shot them since they can't hit us back, but just something to keep in mind. You can do a little bit more damage if you need to for some reason. The Duraludon with the Single Strike Energy does 240, with the Choice Belt does 270, and if you wanted to include the Flying Entry Hawlucha, when you play this card from your hand to the bench, you get to put 1 damage counter on 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So now, if we have used Hawlucha and we put 1 damage counter onto like an opposing Arceus V-Star, a Palkia V-Star, something like that, now the Single Strike Energy Duraludon plus Choice Belt hits 270. We already did 10, that's 280. And that is a KO. So we do have things like Escape Rope Boss to, we can take the active V-Star that has no damage onto it, use Escape Rope to put it to the bench, play Hawlucha, put 10 damage on it, and then boss it back up and hit with our very powered up Duraludon VMAX. It's a lot of steps. Not gonna lie, it's a lot of steps to have the Single Strike Energy and the Choice Belt and the Escape Rope and the Boss and the Hawlucha and the bench space. That's a lot of stuff to happen, but between things like Iono and Chorus and Starburst, we may be able to make it happen. It also lets you use Arceus V-Star and Choice Belt to hit for 220, which is really, really nice. Your opponent, this happened to me. I had a Lugia V on the bench, and it was the only bench Pokemon. So my opponent goes, they attach a DTE, now they hit for 180, and then they Culverus, they find the Choice Belt, now they're hitting for 210, then they just Starburst for the, what's it called, the Hawlucha, and an Escape Rope, or a Boss, whatever they did, no, it was an Escape Rope. They play the Hawlucha, put the 10 damage on, play the Escape Rope, the Arceus goes from the bench to the active, my Lugia goes from the bench to the active, and now they hit it for 220, which was a KO, and I lost the game instantly, because then I had a Lumineon in play. It's like, what am I supposed to do about that? So, just a really incredible way of you comboing things if you want to include the Hawlucha. But yeah, that's pretty much this whole deck. I did include, get out of here, I did include a copy of Super Rod Shuffle and 3 of any combination of Pokemon and basic energies from your discard pile back into your deck. If you need to get some energies back so you can recycle them or re-accelerate them with Arceus V-Star, something you could do. You don't need the Super Rod. I do think it's a nice inclusion, but you might find something else for. And we still have 3 copies of Lost City, so we can really deal with Lost Zone decks and Gardevoir decks or whatever a little bit easier. We just Lost Zone their Pokemon. They can't Rescue Carrier, they can't Clara, they can't Miriam, they can't Super Rod, they can't do any of that stuff to recover those Pokemon that we send to the Shadow Realm, Lost. And very quickly, we're going to talk about Arceus Giratina. I know we talked a lot about Arceus Dura Umbreon. There's really not much change. We have now, this is the change. It's Arceus Giratina, which was a very strong Judge Path deck. And now it's Arceus Giratina, and it's a really strong Path Judge Iono. We use the Judge very early game so that we can, and you might even want to change this to like a 2-2, just to make it a little easier for you to find your judges. Now we go ahead, we use our Starburst, we go ahead, we play a Path, and now our opponent's locked out of the game. We go ahead and play Judge. They only get 4 cards in hand. Later in the game, after they're taking a couple of KOs, we Iono, and now they only get, if they knock out the Arceus VSTAR and the Giratina VSTAR, when we Iono, they only get 2 prizes, and also, by the way, Path is in play. So it's really the very same deck, except now instead of 3 or 4 judges, we're running a 2-2 split Judge Iono. We have the Bibarel. If we get Iono'd in return, we don't really care because the Bibarel says once during your turn, draw until you have 5 cards in hand. If we have more than that in our hand, and we say, you know what, we really need to see some fresh cards, but we can't do something because Path is in play, or we just, we need to find a supporter, we need to find something. Nest Stash on the Squover says once during your turn, shuffle your hand, put it to the bottom of your deck. If you put any cards on the bottom of your deck like this, draw a card. So now we draw 1 card, we get rid of those cards in our hand, the cards that we don't want or don't need, put them to the bottom so we don't see them. Then we draw 1. Then we have the Bibarel to draw 4 more cards. So we just saw 5 cards. Even if we had a hand of 10. We had 10 cards in hand. We put all 10 to the bottom, and we get to see 5 fresh new cards, which means we might be able to go ahead and find Boss's Orders, Trekking Shoes to see even more cards. Maybe we find the Research or the Raihan we need. It's really, really nice. We have a couple of copies of, again, Double Turbo Energy to make it so that Arceus can attack. We can get rid of a single Double Turbo Energy with the Lost Impact. We have to put 2 energy attached to a Pokemon into the Lost Zone to use Lost Impact. So Double Turbo Energy counts as 2 energies, which means 1 Double Turbo Energy meets the requirement of Lost Impact, which is really, really nice. We have Pal Pad to recover some supporters. We have Cheren's Care. Again, you can put in a Penny, you can put in a Volo, you can put in something like that. I think the Cheren's Care is better because we have a little bit higher of an Arceus count. We're more likely to put more than 1 Arceus into play in something like this. But just something to keep in mind. Still very, very similar in terms of we got 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Nest Ball. We have a couple of switch options between Escape Rope and Switch. We got the Choice Belt. Cleansing Gloves is interesting. It just means our attacks do 30 more damage to our opponent's active Psychic Pokemon, which Lost Impact now says we do 280. Well, if we want to hit a Gardevoir EX, we can't use Choice Belt to knock out with Giratina V-Star, right? Because onto like a Gardevoir EX. Gardevoir EX is 310 health. 280, this only works on Pokemon V, so we use the Cleansing Gloves in the Gardevoir matchup to hit 310 onto a Pokemon EX like that. So that's why the Cleansing Gloves is in there. Technically, you can use the Cleansing Gloves to hit into Mew as well. Mew VMAX is also a Psychic Pokemon, but Choice Belt works for that. It works for the Mew, so you have your options. V-Guard Energy means it's a little bit harder for our opponent to KO our Pokemon. Our V-Star Pokemon will have 310 health, and our V Pokemon will have 250, so just a little bit harder to KO. And then we got a 4/4 Grass Psychic, because yes, we do want to accelerate energies to our Giratinas and even our Arceus with the Trinity Charge and Trinity Nova. But really, the question is, why are these decks not changing very much? If you wanted to add in something like a Jet Energy, which is a nice, it's a nice kind of special energy. When you attach this card from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon, you can move it to the active, which is nice, and it provides a colorless energy. I don't know how beneficial it'll be in something like an Arceus deck, but it's something. We do have Hawlucha, we mentioned before, Flying Entry. When you play from your hand to the bench, put 1 damage counter on 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. And then we do have Penny, put 1 of your basic Pokemon, all cards attached to it, into your hand. This is a nice way of, if our opponent hit into our Giratina, or they're hitting into like the Arceus, and we say, you know what, we already have a second Arceus in play, so I'm going to pick up that Arceus and take the damage off of it, and then, you know, whenever energies or tools attached to it go back into the hand, so I can just say, okay, I can recover those resources. So, you know, Penny could be an option, but once you evolve those Pokemon, Penny isn't such a great pick. That's where things like the Sherons or the Vole come into play. But the decks aren't changing much because Arceus specifically says we can accelerate to Pokemon V. And we're not getting any more new Pokemon V. So the established Arceus decks that exist, those are the ones that we're going to be able to play. Maybe they turn around and say, oh, the meta's shifting, so maybe Arceus Tapu Koko VMAX becomes a thing, right? So I think that came out in like Battle Styles or Chilling Reign or something. We can change the Pokemon VMAX, or the VSTAR, whatever, but we're not getting new Pokemon for it. So maybe a new special energy, maybe some new trainers, but that's really all that we're going to get for Arceus decks. I'm sure there's a way we can throw Arceus into like Lost Zone, which we've seen before, and throw like the Luxray with the reversal energy. Like, I'm sure there's some other cool stuff you could do, but as far as like early Paldea evolved meta, these are it. These are the lists that I would probably go with. You know, there's really not much change to them, and it doesn't need to be. They work really well as is. So there you go. There you have it, Arceus decks. Not a lot of change. It's pretty stable as far as the Paldea evolved meta goes, at least in the very early Paldea evolved meta forecast. But we'll have to see how all that changes. That's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much. Now that, you know, if Chien-Pao becomes super popular, you could pair Arceus with the metal type attacker, and there you go. Zamazenta V-Star, for example, could be kind of cool, but then you have competing V-Star powers. Arceus Goodra could become pretty popular because then they have to do a lot more damage, but Baxcalibur Chien-Pao can do a massive amount of damage, so I actually think Arceus Goodra and maybe even Arceus Duraludon, if I don't know, because then you can like boss KO with the Umbreon kind of easily. I don't know. It would be really interesting to see how Arceus decks stay relevant in the Paldea Evolved format. But for now, that's going to do us today. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. I want to say thank you very much to our member Cubs and Ursas, Fernando Ortiz, Black Winds, Mike the Highest, Chin Pokemon. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world to me. And if you want to become a member, you can click the YouTube member thing on the bottom and get your name read out as well.